Welcome everyone to this month's KQL Café. And today is our guest. We have Michael Crane on the show. And let's get started. So your host, Alex and I, as usual. I think that nothing has changed here. Maybe we should add some new URLs sometime, Alex, but rest all is still here. Logo and the agenda. So like I said, I'll first start with a welcome and what's new and updates in KQL. We found quite a lot last month. Then our guest Michael Crane, some learning KQL and some what did you do this month with KQL, as always. This time we'll have some fun. So now let's get started. We have a nice announcement here, Alex.
Yeah, so although it still takes 253 days, but knowing that everybody's agenda is always busy, please mark this day. We're going for another round, KustoCon. It will be in Zurich, Switzerland again, for those who want to attend on site. And I mean, this was incredible. Last year we had visitors from the UK, Germany, Netherlands, but even from Canada. So that was super cool. So we're doing it again, basically same format. We're just started preparing now that we have the site, the location secured. It will be again at the Microsoft headquarters in the Circle at the Zurich airport. And for those who cannot make it to travel to Switzerland for this, you are also very welcome to join the afternoon sessions that will be streamed online again.
You don't get a chocolate.
Yeah, you don't get chocolate in that case. Yeah, and we're also talking already with some of the well-known presenters, but also this year, of course, we want to give room to new people who are active in the space of KQL. So stay tuned for more in the next coming weeks.
Yes. So the next slide.
Yeah, so here it's worth noting there has been an update on the following two tables, BehaviorInfo and BehaviorEntities. Those tables by itself were around already since a while, but there's new columns in there. And below, in the link below, you get directed to the GitHub page where you see the differences. So also the descriptions have changed slightly. So there's MITRE ATT&CK references in there. There's a new column called title. So definitely take a look at those and also read the related Microsoft docs. And especially if you have enabled UEBA in Sentinel, not mentioned here, but also be aware of the behavior analytics table. So yeah, that's basically it for this one. Good.
Excellent.
Our good friend Mehmet has launched a new course called Practical Threat Hunting for Beginners. So definitely, if you're new or even advanced into KQL, give it a look. And yeah, I guess by now everybody knows Blue Raven. Great experience, great content. I can even say I was recently part in a CTF. Mehmet, who was in the background there, basically said, I can exactly see who has followed my courses. So yeah, definitely a great resource for anyone doing threat hunting. Yeah.
It's actually a real good one. I've started it. I'm not going to spoil anything, but I also commented him. I really liked the first exercise. He gave an amazing tip. Like I said, not spoiling, but if you run into it, it's quite nice. It will open a lot of doors.
Cool. Yeah, definitely worth the few bucks.
Yeah.
Good. Also, Bert-Jan getting a major update. That's why it's called V2. So if you want to know what's new in there, as you know, all the Defender table have action types. And it can be interesting because not everything is always, documented in real time. Historically and even nowadays, I still do very often when I come across a tenant, a device event distinct action type to see whether I can spot anything new. But if you want to automate those things, definitely take a look at the automation that Bert-Jan has created here. So you basically get everything delivered right into your mailbox, if you like. Good. Yeah, this is an interesting topic. My colleague Thomas Kort did some work here because apparently he had nothing to do during the Christmas season. And he delved into a topic, what if attackers misuse your systems management platform? And in this case, Thomas basically defined a few potential attack scenarios where a malicious actor, for example, would gain access to your Microsoft Intune device management platform. And guess what? What they could do. So they could start wiping your devices and that sort of activities. So based on those hypotheses, Thomas also developed a few useful detection scripts. So definitely take a look at the blog post as well as the GitHub repo where you'll find all those detection rules. Yeah, then again, Bert-Jan again, very active friend around community. So Bert-Jan just started a new KQL series on technical detection engineering best practices. And you might already know some of that, depending on where you are in learning KQL, but also always good to have a little refresher. As always, Bert-Jan quality, very well explained with good examples. So definitely take a look at those useful tips around ingestion delays, handling language differences in log sources, case sensitivity in logs. I cannot emphasize this enough. If you join two tables and you have user principal names and a username, and in one table it's all lowercase and all uppercase, those kind of tips to normalize those before you start joining. So definitely take a look at this blog post as well as the upcoming series that will be most likely released in the next couple of weeks.
So then this is one of my slides. So while browsing the internet, as you know, Trent has some nice series, a book, some blog posts about the must-learn KQL. And at the moment, he is testing a must-learn KQL app. It's only in the Apple Store. It's in test flight, so you can register for the beta. And there he uses some AI and some nice things to make a KQL training app, which is quite nice. Like I said, it's currently in beta, so you can do the test flight link, you can access it, and then you can play around a bit with it. Then I have two honorable mentions this month. While browsing the X, I found a new group posting KQL queries. This case, Fallguard. I haven't heard from them before. I am the third follower, but they made some quite interesting queries to monitor some VMware, some accounting. So it's interesting to take a look at their post. I haven't seen them on the KQLquery.com, but I can imagine they will that eventually get there also. But for now, take a look at their Twitter because they have some nice things there. And then some other people who did follow the instructions on the formatting of their GitHub pages. Enviso, they started posting KQL queries on their GitHub repository. I can imagine those will be added also to the KQL search, the KQL query from Ugur. And I have some nice queries in there for some browser extensions, the Claudebot, some nice Teams things. So check their page also out. And the moment we've been waiting for. We have a guest, like I said, Michael Crane. He's working at Microsoft. He does a lot of things with KQL. And today he will share some of his one of many things that he does in KQL. So here he is.
Awesome. Thank you. Am I good to take it over?
Sure.
Yes, you.
All right. Thanks, guys. Thank you, everyone. Michael Crane, like they stated, work at Microsoft. I'm more or less on the federal side, but what we call the defense industrial base. So weapons manufacturing, but federal all up. So protecting the United States. I do work in security. I'd say my main job over the last 20 years has mainly been identity, but at the same side, same coin, right? It's identity and security, right? So, excuse me. And that's important, right? So in today's landscape, I focus a lot on ITDR, so identity threat detection and response. Just outside the day job, but there's a lot of different ways we can kind of encapsulate, KQL, governance, the digital forensics, and ITDR. So that's what I kind of want to show today. And I just did a federal seminar, I think about a week or two ago. So I'm going to kind of reuse some of that deck material, but I'll go through how we see some of the items and the landscape, how we do some of the stuff, and how I've created some things around control mappings. I'll kind of explain where I'm going next with this stuff. That I'll actually have a project for free out in GitHub, and I would love others to help build it. But really cool stuff. So you just give me a second. Let me share my screen. And can everyone see this okay?
Works perfect.
Great. So some of the stuff we won't go too deep into. I know you gentlemen have covered this stuff before, right? With how we do transformations, how we can save on money. I'll go on through a couple things on some things that we're seeing in very, very large organizations too, right? But anyway, so what I had shown was improving resilience with Microsoft Sentinel and Azure, right? So building a cost-effective, again, detection-ready SOC with intelligent telemetry management and AI-powered threat hunting. And I'm not talking about Security Copilot, okay? So one thing folks have to be aware of, and you all on the call may not know, and it's not a bad thing, right? But you all usually focus on where? On the public cloud, commercial cloud. There is more than just commercial cloud, right? We have other enclaves where we have parity issues where not all the features will be in these other enclaves, right? So we have to figure out a way, okay, how can we still accomplish the goals for the mission? Right. So that's a spin on this. Right. All right. What we'll learn today is, right, we're going to capture the right telemetry. So that's bringing the right data in. Right. Everyone pretty much knows here, right? You can get chatty logs. Can we clean it? Those are data collection rules. Can we transform, drop, et cetera? ETL, right? Extract, transform, load is sent at the end of the day. Retaining data costs. So this session is not about how we're going to do tons of savings, but one of the items that we have seen tremendously save, talking about $1 million a month type savings, right, in Sentinel. And that's what a CISO wants to hear, right? How can we detect and investigate faster? So just like I said, I'm going to show you a custom solution where we can align the detections of our KQL hunting, align them to a control mapping, and then we align them to that MITRE ATT&CK framework. I'm not talking about the blade that's in Sentinel, right? How can I see it quicker to my control mapping for my governance risk compliance with digital forensics, and then I can hand them to an auditor as well, right? So now maybe I can hit an ATO, authority or to operate, right? So now the tenant can start ingesting data and deploying resources. All right. So a lot of the issue we get into, right, a lot of stocks get into is the logging dilemma, right? I think that's, we can all agree with that, right? The CFO will say, why is my bill so high? That's a common one. CISO asks, well, why did we miss the breach, right? Auditor always says, well, where's the evidence, right? So now we have three circles, and we need an answer for those. We do have critical telemetry domains. So for anyone who's followed, CISA Zero Trust, right? They have the domains, essentially there's identity, there's network, there's email, endpoint, cloud, right? Microsoft, myself and some other colleagues, I don't know if anyone's ever seen them, but we have deployed CISA Zero Trust alignment models from CISA and DoD to Microsoft language, right? So we have deployed those as well. But those are essentially your pillars, right? So do we need to log everything, right? We have to have complete visibility, but what does that mean? We can't have unsustainable costs, right? That just, it's going to kill us, right? If we don't log anything, now we have to answer to the CISO why we missed a breach, right? And we want to log smartly, right? So that gets into that tiering, et cetera. And now with Data Lake fully in the commercial, this landscape will change, but I would say more or less when I'm building out solutions, I try to focus on commercial only, then see where my parity gaps are in the other enclaves. But when I like to log smart, and I'll show some of that today, I like to send it to the data lake. That is auxiliary logs under the covers of log analytics, right? That's where people get a little tripped up. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that, right? But they say, oh, no more auxiliary logs at data lake. No, under the covers is auxiliary logs, right? So, and it's a great way going forward. I just, once auxiliary logs v2 came out, which was data lake, I was ecstatic about that. Again, so, and I'll get into a demo here, right? So what to collect, your critical stuff, right? We want the identity logs, right? We want sign-in logs, interactive, non-interactive, the audit logs. We need an audit trail, right? Security events. That's always a touchy one. I do have on my GitHub, Sentinel has I think 3 tiers to like a minimal, common, and then all, I think security events, right? The problem with all is then you're getting app locker and everything else, and your cost is going to go through the roof, right? We have logging frameworks that federal needs to align to with, White House executive orders. But more importantly, let's just pick one out, say CIS or NIST 800, right? That's one I'll get to at the end I'm working on. But when you map a framework and you want to say, I need all security events. Okay, well, what is the framework? What's the intent in the framework and what does it say? Then that really, you have to start to kind of unravel, well, these are the security events I need. I need 4624, 4625. I don't need all of them, right? That's where this whole idea kind of stemmed from, was another logging initiative, which I will show you all, and where I'm going next on the roadmap to create something for like the NIST 800 framework to be more strategic in what we actually have to have, not just saying, go grab these logs. At the end of the day, that doesn't help anybody, because now I have to answer to the CFO why our data is through the roof, right? Why the cost is through the roof. All right, so one thing we can do here is, let me show this. So I'm not going to show how we turn on connectors, right? I think a lot of the folks here who've watched this channel have kind of been through that. But one of the things I want to go through before I show the full solution is in KQL. All right, and can you all see this okay? Or should I zoom in a little bit?
Zooming a little bit might help. Yeah.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So one of the items that when you need to have an audit trail, and I don't mean like the full, like I need to see what happened. When you have governance, risk, compliance, and you need to prove to an auditor to a specific framework, right? You can pick whatever framework you want. I don't care what it is. You need to prove that data is there, right? And that you can track that, right? So what I took a step forward with a team and I that we built all this stuff was we really drove into KQL pretty hard, right? So instead of just doing let's say the basic, if I went like this, if I just highlighted this, if I did AAD service principal sign-ins over the last 30 days, I want to see sign-in activity. That's great, right? I know I have that data, but I'm really honing in on a deeper activity, like a digital forensic. Can I show if an auditor says, okay, let's say in this example, focus on that service principal alert app or Teams for RET, right? So what we did was I wanted to make this easier out of the box for an analyst. Heck, even an auditor, I don't care who it was, right? Where this had to take a little bit of learning for me. I knew how to do the let variables, right? But what you can see here is this is the key to this magic, right? So if we look here where we're using let, and I'm calling let's say a target service principals, or let target app IDs, or let target results, right? They correlate down here to where you see on line 15, 16, and 17. So for each let, I have an aware and array based on that let variable, right, equals 0, meaning if there's no result, that 0 essentially is just saying if there is no result, still show all results, just like this is, right? So I'm not filtering right now. I'm still showing all results because I have nothing in here. Or service principal name in the target service principals, which would be up here. So if, for example, and I have an example here, right? So it says like, Teams for RET. If I wanted to do this, just highlight this. I'll put in this dynamic right here. Now, if I run this, I have a full targeting solution. So out of the box, so out of the box, you have non-filter, but now the analyst can filter strategically without guessing. So now I'm taking guesswork out of it, right? A lot of what I've seen in the field where we may have, level 100 to 400 KQL analysts, all right? But where they really struggled with was searching, which is I always say, when I'm teaching folks, start with search, the search operator, right? Where do I want to find? Start with search. Let's build from there, and we'll start filtering. And then the other thing was, so they struggled with search and how to find that data, then filtering. And I was like, man, that's really crazy. How is filter the hardest thing? Well, it depends on where you're putting it in the KQL code, right? So that ended up creating, if you folks can see here, why I made comments here on, I broke them into parts. So every KQL that we have, like hundreds of them, are broken into parts, right? So now this makes it easier for the analyst, right? So if they're in a true like digital forensics, so just outside of a governance type deal, or if, hey, Alex, you're the auditor and you say, I need to see service principal sign-in logs, just all, okay, cool. I need to see this particular app. I got you, done. I'm saving time. I don't have to sit there, sweat bullets with auditing. I have been there before in my entire career. And I'll tell you what, one, it's not fun. Two, what usually happens is people struggle to get that data like a snap of a finger, and then you get people breathing down your necks, and it's not a fun time, right? Or you may have the data in your SIM tool, SIM of choice, let's say Sentinel in this perspective, but if I don't know how to pull that data out, now I may panic and say, oh man, let me go over to the event log or security event logs on the domain controller, manually pull these off because I just don't know how to get it, right? So all those needs are compiled properly into a KQL from that perspective. And that's how we started initiative 1 of what I'm showing, right? And I never get to the really cool stuff, but this is how the back end of what we're doing. So we're just taking a framework of saying, hey, I need to track, for example, let's say NIST says, I need to track service principal creation. When a user is added to Entra, et cetera, go down the path. We have a mapping for each one and a KQL for each one, for each control, right? And that's how we got to this. So that's how we started, right?
I have one question.
Yeah.
So pretending that I knew NIST quite a bit, the 800 and the SP, whatever number, but when it comes to those very specific requirements, like, monitoring service principals, can you maybe tell me or us where that detailed level will be specified? In which publication?
Yeah. So the problem with frameworks, and this is why what I'm showing you is a custom, custom built solution. The problem with any framework is they don't go that deep, right? It's just a high level. Say, they pop a number out and they say, you need to see control and access. Okay.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, got you.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I was just thinking I was missing something. Like I would have loved, because SIS and NIST, I mean, they're all very generic, right? You should have an inventory. You should monitor your DNS logs, and that's basically. So I was just wondering whether I might have missed specific guidance.
No, you didn't miss anything. It's easy to say. It's clear as mud. Any framework is clear as mud when it comes to logging, right?
Yeah.
And that's the struggle, that I have seen even before Sentinel, even 20 years ago, sitting on prem and trying to send stuff in over here, log capture this. But what exactly do we need? That's the problem.
Yeah, it's the same with retention, right? I mean, if you ask someone, how long do you need your data? One will say 2 years because it's a requirement. Whenever I challenge that, it has always been like that, Okay.
Right.
Good.
Right. And then if you ask, say if you ask a hunting team, a forensic team, they may say, well, it's only really good for 6 months, right? So it really depends on what someone says. Or you may have a government entity and they say, well, I need it for 7 to 10 years. Why?
Yeah.
like okay.
Yeah,
all that stuff is crazy, right? But yeah, I'm glad you asked that because that's exactly what ended up driving the solution.
Yeah.
Right.
So
and
I'll have to apply common sense, basically.
Yep. Yeah. And I'll show you the control mappings, but I'll pivot right now so remember what we did here. I'll pivot to some other cool things, and I'm going to show you how I'll answer your question in a framework perspective in a really neat way. All right. That was a great question. Thank you so much for that. That was awesome. All right. Data tiering, right? The basic tier is still supported. I know a lot of folks understand that still. One thing to be there's a caveat there, right? The basic tier is not supported by Data Lake, so I do not promote that. However, again, Data Lake is only in the commercial public tenants, right? So we may still have customers that I may see that still we can only do basic tier at the moment, right? So it is what it is. So that's why this is here. But like for today's session, I would say, we focus on the analytical tier and the auxiliary tier. And I know there was just some update of some other stuff coming out too. What was it? Interactive, and which is technically the hot, but right, the KQL search. It's all great stuff, right? Again, like we said in the beginning, the auxiliary tier is Data Lake. That is what it is under the covers for the Log Analytics workspace, right? I think it's even set to 0.05 cents per gig ingestion for East US, something like that. Very cheap, right? For an example, and the beauty with auxiliary tier, or even analytic tier, but I want to show one of the biggest ones that we like to do at transforming it, ingestion. So I could probably do an hour session on this one alone, but for time's sake, the Azure AD non-interactive sign-in logs. Okay. That's a huge one, right? I don't have I can prove it. I can show it. I don't have customer data in front of me. However, what we do, we created a transformation, which is on my GitHub, and anyone, maybe I've posted before on my LinkedIn. You should be transforming your Azure AD non-interactive logs to remove conditional access policies of everything but success or failure out of those non-interactives. In non-interactive logs, I don't care about report only, disabled, right? I don't need those. For any time when on behalf of a user and this stuff generates, we are talking massive amounts of data. And a lot of times, one, we're answering to a CFO, or the customer just thinks they need to have all this data without a transformation. But now we're stopping more ingest coming into a Sentinel instance, right? Because all the E5 benefit is essentially being focused into non-interactive logs. Now they're wasting money. They have no more budget to ingest anything else, right?
Yeah, and I can confirm that. Especially the more CA policies one has. Now we can have another hour discussion. Why would someone have 180 CA policies?
Yeah.
But I can speak from practical experience. This can really go into the hundreds, if not thousands of dollars a month just because of those conditional access data that you're bringing in. Yeah.
Yep. Right. Exactly. And that's really it, right? So like as an identity guy, when I'm looking at their CA policies and I see a ton of report only and I'm like, hey, using Sentinel? They're like, oh yeah. And I'm like, oh man, we gotta go transform this, right? I know right off the bat, right? Now, if they're not, okay. I know it's not going to be as bad. But for an example, I'll show, this is just my little tenant, right? I don't have a big customer tenant. But let's say this is what, let me zoom in. This is right here. You just look at the numbers, right? So let's say that's my non-interactive ingest, right? It's very large, right? Let's just pretend this is huge. And then I do a transformation, which I'll show the code. This one we were just keeping success, but really if you wanted to do failure, you would just pipe out, you could do failure like this. And what we're saying here is, hey, after that went through, right, after I did a DCR, so the DCR this is where you would do the data collection rule. So for the folks who don't know, you would get you would go to the non-interactive table, create a transform on that table, okay? And then in the transform editor is where we would, source is the log that we're at. And what we're saying is create this column, cap result underscore CF, you call it whatever you want, extract all this information, and then we're extracting the result pieces that are in the dynamic array. And I'm saying only keep success failure and project away the conditional access, but then keep this column. So essentially what we're doing is then when we're done with that, and let's just say we run it, now our result is essentially almost zero, right? What we're seeing in the field is 80 to 90% reduction in wasteful spending and wasteful logs. That data is not pertinent to anything. We don't need it, right? Again, for the folks listening in, we're keeping success and failure. We're removing the non-pertinent, like report only, disabled, etc., from the non-interactive flows. I don't care about that logging. One of my customers ended up saving 1.2 terabytes per day. That's we're talking real money now, right? So when we did this was an initiative that we ended up pushing across all of our customers to save money. Now you would think, well, that's a lot. We don't necessarily want to lose money, but really it's not losing money because now we're enabling a customer to start ingesting other data that is pertinent, right? So we're just getting rid of fluff. Now they can bring in other third-party connectors, anything else. And now let's open the door for them to transform anything they need to, right? And now with the beauty of the aux logs, I mean, I could show to do other things too, right? But this is a fun one. This is a big one that I feel like everybody should be doing, right? Heck, even in your home tenants, right? This would save you essentially in your E5 benefit if you have a little tenant there, right? So really cool stuff. Let me see. So the next one was another one where I have this stuff too. I think you guys have covered some of this. When best to use like an auxiliary log? Right? I'm sure you guys have probably done some sessions on this. It's a hot topic. I know Jeff Appel has done a bunch of stuff. I love reading his stuff on the data lakes and aux. Now here's a cool one, right? So like we have one of these, we have a mandate over here where, let's say a frame, right, Alex, back to your point, like we have another framework that says, hey, you need to have performance logs on Windows. Well, man, that's a lot of data to be bringing in a Sentinel at that ingest, right? Especially if it's not really hunting. I don't, it's whatever. But I do love a consolidated workspace at the end of the day. So I won't show the whole thing, but essentially what I ended up doing was I don't think I have it. I do have it here. Here's a script here to create an auxiliary table for performance logs, right? So that's a very, very heavy log, very chatty. And it's all here, right? So when we're all said and done, we create the table. Now I have a data collection rule here doing the same thing. So I'm calling all the counter specifiers that I need, okay? And down here, we should be able to see that it is going into a custom table, not called custom. That just means, that is the output stream that it is a custom table because it, has CL. But the table is M2131 perf CL. Okay. So now I'm bringing in all this data at 0.05 cents. Rarely ever have the KQL, but now I can just use, KQL search in the unified, right? Very easy. Saving tons of money. I can just go straight into that log analytics workspace, right? We're seeing more and more of this stuff, especially on the commercial side. But man, auxiliary logs data lake is really opening the doors to a new frontier, which I'm so excited for, right? It is just one small example, again, just for the demo here, but possibilities are endless. And let me show. So let's get to the cool stuff. All right. So I just want to cover some of that. So Alex, this gets back to your control mapping thing. So this is the cool stuff. And we kind of put all of it together. So let's say we have, right, we're saving money on some other stuff, but more importantly, now we're back to you pick any framework, any control. I have governance. I have digital forensics. I can literally use the same KQL code for my analyst to hunt. I can answer to the auditor. I can answer that I've saved money. I can do all this good stuff, right? Cool. And I can also map to MITRE. That's even better, right, at the end of the day. So again, what I just went over was it's an analyst-driven workflow. And that's what I'm about to show you is a workbook that was using it across some customers. It's in beta. I'm about to flip it on its head and do something even cooler. I'm working on the side, trying to plan through that. What we're going to do is we will go here. So don't worry so much on the name. Now, this is just a common workbook with some basic parameters, right? So let's just say, so in a framework, if I wanted to pick identity, right? Don't focus so much on this left. So if I click identity, and Alex, I think this is the answer to your question back from earlier, right? So identity has two categories. I have identity and credential management, and then privileged identity and credential management, right? So if I drill into each one, I can now see like, oh, I can track account creation, cred management, go down the list, right? So let's go to account creation. Now, these are just numeric numbers that I had created. It's just for a tracking control, these numbers here. But what you want to focus on is, now I know I'm zoomed in too much. There we go. If we focus on, say, the workload is Entra, right? Audit logs, operation name, add user, right? I'm under that category of adding users. So as you can see here, so account creation, I'm tracking through Entra. Let's see, Windows, security event, Sentinel, identity info, and Defender for endpoint, Defender for identity. So I'm mapping the workloads to the control mapping and then spitting out that detailed KQL. Remember that I showed you guys earlier for the full digital forensic? But watch this. Now, if I click this, I'm going to add this as trusted, and I'm going to show you what it's going to be calling. Hopefully the demo gods are on my side as we're live.
Hey.
So look at that. So as I click each mapping, it's replying with a MITRE ATT&CK framework. So remember, under the covers in this workbook is that it's looking at the control mappings, but they are the KQLs too, right? So it's looking at this mapping, and all this is saying, so this is using a Logic app, and I'll show this too. This is a built-in, so this piece of where the MITRE ATT&CK is under the covers, it's calling the HTTP URI back to a Logic app that's using a managed identity to do all the work back and forth. And it's just, it's effectively being an analyst and just saying, okay, I'm going to return this. It's just say, hey, align these controls to MITRE ATT&CK and spit it back. Boom. Got effective immediately. So now I took my control mapping and I'm aligning that to MITRE right out the gate. Right. By the way, this goes over very, very well with customers. So that's only one piece. Right. So now if I click this, remember it had that KQL. I'm also parsing out that same KQL down here, just to this little area here called event queries with AI summarization. So remember, here's the whole KQL, right? Here's my objective. Here's my broken parts, all of what I need, right? That's just so the analyst can see it. Okay, what's happening? Now, I'm going to add as trusted there. I'm connecting to Azure OpenAI that I have stood up. That's the guts behind all this. So I have all the mappings I did. It's reading a CSV file. It's using Azure OpenAI with ChatGPT, I think 4.1, I can't remember what I set up. But I'm getting a full summary of results based off a control mapping of a framework. This is where this is slightly different from Security Copilot, just looking, say, hey, go do this. I'm looking at a control mapping, and I'm taking the results down here. So here's my results. So this KQL on the left is giving me event validation on the bottom. And then over here, I can see exactly what's going on as a summary of results. And this is like my own poor man's Copilot right here. Right? So it's reiterating everything that's happening with that result. And one of my guys are on the call here. Tom is on the call, but it's saying, he did, this is what's going on with Tom, blah, 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 blah. And it tells me if I need to summarize even further. Here's my tax service management, etc. Right? This is how we're achieving some of those parity gaps in other enclaves too with Azure OpenAI, using full governance, digital forensics. It's already built into here. And let's say the analyst wants to pivot, right? They don't want to just be stuck in this workbook. Well, as you guys know, like in a workbook, you can just click this little icon, right? And then they can go threat hunt and plan off of this, right?
Mm.
So now they can go filtering and everything else. This is what we've been using with some of our customers. And it's just a totally different spin, right? Totally different spin. And it's been really, really fun. And I have some big ideas for where we're going next. So it's really neat stuff though. But like on the back end, all we're doing is, let me show you this. So all we're doing is essentially calling a logic app. Again, I'm using a managed identity, right? A managed identity for two pieces that is doing a call. So the one managed identity has the RBAC permissions to read the workspace, and there was another one, I can't remember exactly. I'd have to look over here what it was. I think it was, I can't remember what, it was to read, Log Analytics Reader. And then, so it had permissions over here for the Cognitive Services OpenAI user. So the calls would happen over a managed identity. Right, so we have security in mind, best practices, but in the app, it's really slick. So right here, let turn. So this URL right here, when you saw in the workbook, I ended up copying this, and this is neat to show everyone else. So if you we do this. I go edit. Let's go here. You have to, it's going to be querying item, and then you have to do a custom endpoint. It's a post, right? So text plain, large, you have to kind of set this up. But this is where you would put that URL. This is the Logic app, right? So what ends up happening is then on a Logic app, I'm building out the case. This is the analyst here, right? So this is how the system role is responding back with how you saw MITRE. Right, and the same would be said for the other area too, like for the the log analytics workspace. So kind of same stuff. Where is it? I don't remember where it was, but yeah, that would be, and that's how we're doing this. Where I'm going next is I'll have it all open source on my GitHub. I actually have all this, not the AI pieces, but I have the piece before we did the AI piece, all on GitHub. It's called M2131. I have a ton of KQLs that did all the DFAR mappings. Those are all on my GitHub. Where I'm going next with is I'm going to kind of disabandon this one control mapping, and I'm going to pivot to NIST 800 specifically. Take all the good works that we did here, somehow compile, ground it, compile it back to NIST 800, which shouldn't take me too much more time because this one was a beast. NIST 800 is not as big as this one. And somehow find a way to make it I wanted to have a CRUD around it, create, update, delete, that the community could help build it. So I'm trying to work through how to really achieve that, where we could post out what needs to be there, maybe do some KQL query packs, maybe a workbook if it does. But really the next step is, I don't even really need the workbook. As long as we maybe have the content out there and the community can help create and update material or mappings into in the KQLs, I can just use MCP all day. I don't even need a workbook anymore, right? Mm-hmm. I can just plug in with MCP and say, here's my grounding data, or enter, or put the data into Sentinel as a KQL query pack. Just something I got to work through these ideas, but I'm going to be leveraging the MCP a lot stronger. Probably Security Copilot for maybe summarizations and maybe a dashboard view. Maybe the workbook, we'll see, but I'm trying to elevate that to the next step, and I'm in the early planning phases, but I'm going to be moving pretty quick with it. So, yeah, neat stuff. Any questions, man? I hope that answered your question, Alex. Did that finally answer your question on the framework?
For those looking at me, I'll have a smile on my face since about you started talking. This is really awesome, honestly. Yeah. And it's awesome in two ways, on the topic itself, which I really like, but at least to me, you've also shown some, let's call it technical techniques of what you can do. I maybe I live under a stone, but I've never seen or came to the idea of, okay, you have a workbook, you invoke, I mean, that one is clear, but to actually invoke a playbook, that's new to me at least.
Yeah,
super cool.
Yeah, that is neat, right? Yeah, you're essentially invoking the playbook through the workbook, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and like I said, the real reason was, I'm not knocking on Security Copilot. It can do a lot of amazing things, especially with threat intelligence, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
But we work in different areas where we have disparity. We don't have all the tools available to us.
Yeah.
So Azure OpenAI is available, and so our playbooks have been there. So we're like, well, what can we do? Right? You just got to figure it out. But sky's the limit with it, honestly. And in a way, it barely uses a lot of resources because you're not really opening this book a lot, right? Like, you're not opening this one. This one is more of GRC to show the governance risk compliance with an auditor. Now, I have all the KQLs in the KQL query pack. That's for your hunters every day. Go use them. You don't need to be using this a lot. So in a way, this keeps costs down too, and I don't need to use up my SCUs. Right? So I can spare my SCUs that my organization is using, and just for something little, I don't need to use my SCUs. I rather save them. Right? So that's how you could look at that too. Like, even if you did have Security Copilot. Right? So, but yeah, more to come. Be on the lookout, because I'm going fast with the other stuff. Fingers crossed. I would personally love to see Microsoft build the frameworks built like directly into the unification, especially with MDC coming in now into the unified, right? And just take any framework, you call it. But now with all the AI and ML and the models on behind the scenes, there's nothing stopping, the organization from, it should create that on the back end where an analyst, we could have like a compliancy blade now and just go there and see, hey, do all my logs line up to a compliancy framework? That would be massive.
And we get, from the field, or at least from MSSPs, I can tell we get that question a lot, right? Like, okay, what's your MITRE coverage? And on one hand, you have to answer, well, Microsoft doesn't always, openly review, especially in Defender, or not just not review, but, they're like updated on a daily basis, those detections. So it can also really help to kind of map out that, right?
Yeah. With proof, right? This is the proof is the actual KQL, right? And that's what I want to bring to today. It's we got to get out of this is the framework. I need the proof.
Exactly. Yeah, because again, Sentinel, I mean, the built-in MITRE, it's a good start. But it's more from a perspective like, okay, you have these logs, this is what you could do, and I think this brings it a step further. It's, I have those logs, I can execute it, and I, like you say, you can prove that actually something is coming out.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Super cool.
Yep, that's all I got. So hope you all enjoyed that. And I'll put let me put a link in here. And if anyone feels, if they want to ping me on LinkedIn, please feel free. I can help navigate or talk to you on the side too.
So you mentioned MCP. Do you want to spend a few words on that one? Originally I had a demo of the Sentinel MCP in this agenda, but I dropped it last night as I didn't feel like I was well prepared.
Sure. I would love.
Yeah.
Let me see. Give me a sec. Yeah, we could pivot real quick. This would be a cool little. Give me 1 second. Let me see if I can find the code where I was playing around with. Give me 1 second. I'll show the workbook. Here we go. Okay. So I'll just do an example. Now, one thing I will say, caveat. You still need to learn KQL. Do not think MCP is going to replace you. Maybe someday. I'll be honest. Maybe someday. But as of right now, you still have to have a very strong understanding of KQL because there's still mistakes that happen. And even with MCP, I still have to go in there. I have to tweak things. I have to ground it properly with my data. And that is the only way I move forward. If it's not grounded with my knowledge, or or if I took your KQLs or Matt Zorich's KQLs, right? It has to have good data, and you have to understand it. If you don't understand it, you might get somewhere, but you're not going to get too far. So as an example, let me see. I spit this one out in about an hour. Let me show you this. And this is pretty detailed. This is just for something different. Let me click these. I still have to adjust these. I got to fix these parameters. But let me show you this. So when you have an MCP, here it is right here, right? So what I'm doing is I'm literally having a conversation. So I have agent, right? So I have Sentinel MCP, MCP learn. So before anything goes live and anything I'm doing, anything I'm creating, I have the MCP learn validating through documents. And when I ground it, I say in article, if it is not proven, it does not go into the data set. That's a way to ground it, right? Prove it. So it kind of like does step by step. Okay, I proved it. Check. Good. Live. But what I had asked it was, I said, and this kind of next step of where I was going to is, hey, I just need to create an authority to operate workbook for a landing zone that we're deploying. Nothing crazy, right? Just I need to create a workbook. Here's my other data. The Sentinel MCP can read my entire instance, all my workbooks, so it knows how I KQL, it knows how I work, how I need to do my parameters. So anyway, I took about what probably would have taken me, let's say 40 hours into 2 hours. And I was done with some adjustments on my side, right? So essentially what we're doing is we're just let's say in my landing zone, I just have a landing zone, but obviously we know we have Entra ID there, right? I mean, it's Azure, right? So here it's just saying, are you ready to operate? Well, I'm ingesting 9, 2 need to be validated. Entra ID is covered 82%. But look, so all it's doing, the MCP is doing, and as it was building this workbook, I didn't build this workbook. I adjusted it. I grounded the data. I watched this thing go on autopilot for 30 minutes, back and forth, just back and forth. Okay. So now what it's doing is it looked at the log source or component, Entra, log source. This is the actual table. So MCP is validating it with the actual table. Is that data validated in a status? And here's the last timestamp. Obviously, there may not be no data here for risky service principal events, so maybe go validate it. But look, I have it say validated. I'm bringing in the table at least, right? So now I know, I'm ready to operate. I have all my Entra ID logs. And right here, all I did was just say, hey, I also need you to go to, and I grounded it with NIST, the whole framework. And I said, hey, map each one to the proper control mapping of NIST. So AC2, IA, just that, right? And then I said, add docs, add the documents of how to enable these features. Boom. So I click on this, goes to a feature, like how to do this, right? That is the slickness of leveraging VS Code, Claude, and the MCP tools available to you, where I can scale like none other. Another one. This one I had to have a lot of manual input. Now, I'm not even close to done with this, but Sentinel does not have a good MDI workbook around ITDR. So this one, Alex, took me a lot longer to ground because I have all my KQLs. I have this data. I have this data. I have this data. And when I was building this, I said, hey, what I want you to do is, I said, MCP Learn, I want you to go pull all our documentation on best practices of how to threat hunt around MDI or just ITDR and the XDR blade. Let's just say that, right? Take all those practices. Then I want you to align those to what thresholds and what security lines that we capture. Here's a ton of KQLs. Here's this. Look at this. I mean, it was almost like a 3-hour conversation, me going back and forth with this thing. And then it finally went on its own. I said, all right, you're ready to go. Essentially, that's what happened, right? All the grounding. So now if I do this, right? So it broke it out into all alerts. look, you see right here, reconnaissance, credential access, lateral movement, persistence, risky accounts, authentication, hunt. The code knew how I built my workbooks and how I broke them up. And then it just used MCP learn and all the other grounding data to essentially create an amazing out-of-the-box ITDR workbook. Right, it still needs a lot of work, right? But this is still pretty cool. So it tells you, like, and here's a link. So here's the MITRE ATT&CK. Here's the external IDs. Here's the alert names. Boom, boom, boom. If you have any, it'll show up, right? So I got to adjust all this stuff, but still very cool, right? This is the power on top of your learning of KQL, then what you can do to take it to the next level and save yourself time. Because, you know, I deployed a conditional access workbook. I don't know if you guys saw it went live in the Entra content. That one took me probably 100, 150 hours over a course of a year to actually build. Then I started leveraging it, and then MCP really started kicking in, right? I'm not wasting that time anymore, but I still need the learnings in the back end of it. Like, I need to understand this stuff, right? But man, does it save me time and really elevates. And it should elevate everyone on this call, because then we're also good stewards of, you know, we could also share content, keep content up to date in Sentinel everywhere, right? So hopefully this helps you too, because it's really neat, you know, what you can do.
I think it's super inspiring, and especially I can actually talk from just, you know, this afternoon where, I mean, I had heard that, you know, AI can help you with workbooks, and I guess it even encourages me more, like, you know, maybe take that time, invest the time to get up to speed, but I think you will massively benefit. I mean, it just took me an hour, you know, just to build, you know, the header page of a workbook, right? The subscription selectors. I mean, I would say, you know, quick and dirty workbooks, I always hate them because, you know, they have no selectors, so people have stored hard-coded stuff. So if you want to develop a decent workbook, you know, make sure you can select subscription, resource groups, log analytics workspace, you know, all that logic. And when you build that from scratch, because now and then I tell myself, you know, I'm not just going to copy over another one I built once, because there's a little risk of, you know, dragging code along that's not needed. But yeah, I agree, it takes time.
To your point, right? This is a great way, and like I said, this is all just code right here, right? Using connected to my GitHub, so you can see where it's literally checking everything. I'm having a conversation with it. But you have to ground it properly to help. So, like, let's say go deploy a connector or some content that has a really good workbook and like those selectors. You can tell the MCP, hey, reference these 3 workbooks here. You know, reference these. So now it goes, oh, okay, now I know what to do. So if you just need a cookie cutter in that perspective, absolutely, now you're going. So if you need a quick and dirty, hey, the customer says I need X, Y, and Z. All right. I'll see you later today, right? You're done with 30 minutes. Let them know you did it maybe 8 hours. Right, whatever. So, you know, but either way, you're speeding up your day. You're done with work earlier. You have more time in life. Yeah. Right. So that's the way I look at it. And
I agree. It's not about, you know, you don't need to learn KQL anymore, but I think if you want to stay in the game, you know, you need to have those toolboxes. I mean, you know, a couple of years ago, I used to say, you know, learn PowerShell. Nowadays, I used to say, since a couple of years, you know, learn KQL, because it's just something, if you're in the Z ecosystem in the Microsoft world, while initially it was only considered as, you know, that's only for security. But if you look now how Microsoft Intune with you know, analytics or people that operating infrastructures, I mean, KQL has become so broad. So this is just another tool. And I think now in the year 2026, you know, on top of that, you know, we must, if you want to survive in this industry, you simply have to get that knowledge of working with things like MCP servers, Visual Studio Code, get a decent understanding of you know, grounding, like you mentioned, and I think it will be beneficial to anyone.
Yeah. I love it. That's nail on the head too. You know, I don't try to scare people, but I tell them too is, if you're going to start using MCP, especially in any organization from an identity perspective, right? Treat MCP just like it's malware. Right, you have got to protect it, right? You know, enforce a stronger auth. So, like, you have got to get these signals in. So that's another thing I'm seeing in the field too. Is like people start using it, and you're like, timeout. Like
Uh.
we don't have any secure. We have no governance, ownership, nothing. Right. So. Yeah.
Well, I mean, read only, might be okay, but I guess, when it comes to allowing the MCP to make to take actions, I think
Yep.
it's a total different beast. And at least I did follow some conversations here and there where there's, of course, big questions about, how secure is this whole MCP?
Yep.
Like things like, okay, how can we, maybe a good topic, right? About speaking about logging, how do can I ping down the actions, that were actually done by the MCP?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Exactly. Right. Yep. All great stuff, man. Absolutely. But yeah, hopefully this session helped you.
Oh yeah, me personally, definitely very inspiring. And yeah, if you have anything new, usually it takes a little bit, but Johnny and we release the show notes. So if there's anything more you want us to leave in the show notes, I'll definitely add all the links to your GitHub repositories. Yeah, just awesome, honestly. Yeah, super cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, man. I'll keep the community updated on LinkedIn too. I have a lot of big ideas for the NIST. I'm going to try to align the entire NIST framework as another example to something even bigger I want to do and have the community collaborate. Right. That's going to be where it's at. Right. So, okay. Yep. Awesome stuff,
cool.
though. So I appreciate you guys for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Michael.
Let me double check.
Great content.
Yes, sir. All right, guys. Well, you all enjoy and thanks again. Seriously.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
All right.
And let me take the screen back. Great content. So back to the deck. Let's continue. So one of the sections we also do in every month is Learn KQL. And this month I want to do something small. So I wanted to show the column if not exist operator, which is a quite nice one. So basically this month what I did was I built a detection on a data source which wasn't always in the right format. Sometimes columns were there, sometimes they were missing, sometimes it had data, sometimes it had dynamic data where the rest was string data. So I started playing, and then what I found out is if we can use the column if exist operator. So basically we check if a column exists, and if it doesn't exist, I give it a value, because if the column didn't exist, then it also didn't have like a null value, so it was impossible to create a detection on it. Also, another thing which I did was there was also a column with MITRE techniques. So basically, to get the MITRE technique, I had to make sure that it was, in this case, it was a dynamic, and if it's not there, I created an empty dynamic. So basically, this way, when you create a detection rule, it is possible that it won't break. So for instance, usually when you don't have data in your columns, the detection, the rule engine doesn't like it. But like I said, if we do now, we say create a alert. And we say test. So we have this, and for sign-in logs. So basically now it's possible to finish a query on and a detection on data which doesn't exist. And this can be helpful if you have maybe some flaky or not complete data set, then you can use this to create detections. So quite nice operator. And if we go to the next slide. So there was another query which I wanted to share, because basically if you do good due diligence, one of the things you want to have is to have your DNS queries. And if you collect the DNS queries from your domain controllers, it can ingest enough data to go to 500 euros a month, 1,000 euros a month ingest, and you're not always using that data Also on the Microsoft Learn page, there's a recommendation to filter out some of the default domains. But I made a query to better understand which data is running through your system. I can also share that in my query. So basically what we do is first I made a data set of the asym logs, in this case for the demo of 30 days. Where's not empty DNS query, because if it's reporting some errors, if there are other issues, then you don't want to see it. I think everything was lowercase, but just to be sure, I do it to lowercase and also replace backslashes to make sure that it's also fit nice. I want to do a byte count so I can see, hey, how much do we ingest? And then I return basically time generated source IP address, DNS query in bytes. I also use the materialize to make sure that it stores the table in memory and it doesn't use this query as a function. So basically, let's go to raw. So now I have the columns specified and I can see, hey, which source IP addresses are querying. And the next thing what I wanted to see was, hey, how many clients are querying a domain? Because if one client is querying a domain, you might want to see it. If all your clients are querying the domain, it's less important. So for in this instance, if I go into my micro tenant, we have these domains, which has been queried by 5 devices, because I only have 5 devices in my small box setup. So basically we could filter out all these domains because everyone is querying them. So it's not a huge deal. So basically that's a good trigger to filter on. Next thing what I wanted to see is, hey, how much data is going to a specific domain? Because if we ingest, like I said, if you ingest gigabytes a day to a specific, I don't know, Azure domain or some other non-important domain, it might not be that great. So for instance, my log analytics workspace is collecting the most. Then we have a traffic manager. So this is also a good way to filter out known domains. So next we want to tie in all those together. So we have the query statistics and we tie it to the client statistics. So basically when we run this, we get to see, hey, these amount of bytes, but also if we go to the left, we can see, okay, 4 out of 5 is doing that. This one, 5 out of 5. Like I said, if there's maybe 1 or 2 devices connecting to the domain, you might not want to filter it out. But if you have more of them, you start to thinking about filtering. And then one of the more complex things I had to do was basically in your query, in your exclusions, you can use one wildcard to exclude anything in front of it. And you can also use the full domain. Microsoft also recommends on the data connector page that if you go filter, then you should do the full URL or full host name and also wildcard them. So basically first I wanted to make sure that I can add the wildcards to the front if it's needed. And also I wanted to have just everything without the first bit. Might it be subdomain or even layers before? And then I also add the wildcard. So basically when I do this, so we have this one, and then I remove this and I also asterisk it. So we have here this bit can be like the URL, and then we have the wildcarded version. And this way I can also easily make larger exclusions because I take out the first bit and then replace it with the asterisk. So next we're gonna summarize it and we're gonna make sure that we have the average client still there. We have the set of DNS queries, so we have 10 queries, so we can have a feeling about the data, because sometimes you have like 1,000 different subdomains for certain traffic. The last scene is nice because if I'm going to use this to filter my DNS queries, today I will make the exclusions on the DCR, and then tomorrow I might see, hey, last seen is from yesterday or the day before, and then I know the filter is also working properly. So if we do this, and now in my very small tenant, I can see, hey, I can exclude these domains, and I can have these wildcarded ones. And for now, the ingest is quite low. But yeah, like I said, if you're in a large environment, if you're in a busy environment, you get higher numbers. And also, just to wrap this talk up, if we go to the data connectors, say DNS, open connector page. So go here to edit data collection rule. We go to resources. So this is the page where we can, next page we can add filters. No, we need to, sorry about that. We first need to add the DCR. Taking a second.
Take your feet off the cable, Johnny.
Should I go to the learn page and show it there? Let's see.
Just close it and
Reload.
open it again.
Yeah.
That's what I usually do, being impatient.
Okay. It's loading now. Okay. Add. Yes.
There you go.
So basically, if you want to exclude anything, you can add a name. So we say filter common domains. And then we have some default filters, and these are the exclusions. So we can filter out maybe query types. So for instance, if we will do query types, then we can filter out all these. So we can only maybe look for A records, AA records, depending on, or filter out the ones you don't want. So PTR, for instance, might be something you don't want to see. Then the next type, which I want to show, is the result. So basically, over here we have all the possible errors that are there. So basically, we want to filter out anything except for the no error, because then you save everything that is successful. Then again, you might want to see those, so that's always depending on how much you want to see and how much you want to filter out. We can click on all of these. It's still in there. So basically, you can't select this one through the GUI, but it's there. And then, like I said, lastly, we can have a filter on DNS query. So for instance, we want to do Microsoft.com, and we want to say, why isn't it, star.microsoft.com. Why doesn't it like me? Was separated, yeah. I shouldn't add a space in there. So this way you can filter out, you work your way through to all your internal domains, all the common domains, the Facebook.coms, Google.coms, everything that clients refresh a lot of times. You know, TikTok applications, they also have a lot of DNS traffic. And you filter those here, and then they won't show up in your DNS event, so you're not paying for the ingest. And it's good practice to every now and then, like I said, run the query. And then you have a cleaner environment, because like I said, some applications really log a lot. That was my KQL query of this month.
Oh, I wasn't even aware of the DNS that you could configure filters there. So that's a good takeaway as well. Yeah.
Nice.
All righty. Let me see the chat. Do we have any questions? No. Okay. Well, we've kept our promise to not overrun. So thanks everyone for joining this month. And Before we leave next month, because as I mentioned last month already, we have a slightly adjustment to the schedule. So next month, it's going to be March 17th. So unlike the last Tuesday of the month, we're going to be 1 week earlier because the week after, Gianni and I are going to be abroad and not available in another time zone. Yeah. And we have Laurie Rhodes next time. Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, looking forward to that. And then let me see, can we tell more? No, for April, June, we're still in the planning. Yeah. So yeah, I hope you found it useful. As always, feedback is welcome. And otherwise, see you hopefully next month, either online or offline by watching our KQL Café recording. Have a great evening, morning, afternoon. Take care. Bye, everyone.
Thank you all for joining. Bye-bye.